And PM Express tonight, one topic on the table. We have been talking about it since morning when this man, the finance minister, went to Parliament to deliver the election year budget. It is the 2020 budget statement. But on the show, we are interested in two things: the numbers and the reality. Let's start with the breakdown of some of the essential things you need to know about the budget. You've heard it all day. Let's break it down for you. What you need to know in case you missed it. First thing you need to know is this number, 12.2 billion. What is that number? The finance minister says that is the amount in your pocket. That is the quantum of money, of cedis, he and his government has put in your pocket since 2017. So what is the evidence to support this? He says, if you break it down among others, you'll find 1.8 billion cedis savings from the free SHS. His argument is that, for example, if you take the free SHS, because it's free, you would have probably be spending 1.8 billion on your child's education. Because you are not spending that amount, the finance minister says that amount is in your pocket. What else? He also says that 1.8 billion, he saved you 1.8 billion from tariff reduction in March 2018. That is money, he says, that should have gone out of your pocket to pay for electricity. The government saved you, and so he says you can find it in your pocket. If you dip your hands in there and you look closely, you'll find 1.8 billion in some of your pockets as well. In fact, all of us, because you all pay for water. Again, what else? This is a big one. 4.1 billion cedis from reduction and abolition of several taxes that the government reduced over the period. One of them including taxes that were reduced at the ports, import duties. Remember when this happened some time back, the folks in Abosoka, they were excited and elated about this. Government says they've quantified that 4.1 billion cedis in your pocket. Well, what's more, they're jubilating here. They are, of course, beneficiaries of NAPCO. How many of them? 350,000 of them. Together, they have benefited 2.9 billion cedis in their pockets. Ghanaians having 2.9 cedis in their pocket, 2.9 billion cedis in their pocket, something they wouldn't have had if this government had not been there. That is the finance minister's argument tonight. And so that is a global figure. And there are other areas he says they've saved the money. But he says this amount is in your pocket. Have you felt it? Have you felt the cedis in your pocket? Share with us. You've been talking about this all day. We'll learn more from our guests when they join us how to break this down further. But then also something you need to also pay attention to in the budget today, roads. Since the rain started, we all know our roads have deteriorated. Government says 2020 is the year of roads. The year of roads. What are they going to do? 80% of contractors will be paid. That's for starters. Also, wherever you are in the country, 16 regions, government says you will benefit. A total of 150 roads will be dealt with. Faulted, potholes gone, all in the year of roads 2020. What else is happening in 2020? Let's talk about revenue. Big problem going into the reading of the budget. How is the finance ministry proposing to address it? One of the things they're doing, they are extending the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. Should they be doing so? Isn't that a way of introducing a new tax? We'll find out from my guests when they join us. Also, special import levy will also be extended for an additional 5 years to raise funds to support the budget. Personal income tax ban will also be adjusted. We quite don't know what that means. Special income tax ban will be adjusted. Is it going to be an increase in the income tax that all of us who work in the formal sector pay? I don't know. We'll try and find that out from my guests in the studio. And then the necessary parliamentary approval also sought to ensure that the 12%, while they do this, 12% minimum wage increase for 2020 is tax exempt. Well, that is something that the finance minister told Parliament today. What about reliefs? There are several reliefs. I didn't know this before, but apparently there is marriage relief, child education relief, and old age relief or will again be adjusted upwards so that all of you will get to benefit from it. That is according to the Finance Minister again today in the budget, and this is according to government policy. What is the latest on the PDS? This is it, the latest. Government is going to initiate an accelerated tender process to select a new private partner for ECG in the coming months. That's what the Finance Minister told Parliament today. Now, something else you need to know in the budget today, 13 billion cedis has so far been spent on the financial sector cleanup. We're learning from the Finance Minister today. That figure has been moving around a bit, but this is the latest update on that. Also, commitment to spend within the legal limits for 2020 election year. This is a big deal, trust me. In every election year, governments overspend, blow the budget out of the water. Economy then starts to struggle in crisis post-elections. The only time we've not done that is 2004. The Finance Minister says they are mindful of that, and in 2020 election year, they will not spend just to please you. They will make sure they are disciplined in the interest of the economy. And so we're going to see how exactly they plan to do that. But if you're going to do this, then something has to happen here. If we expect total revenue and grants in the region of 67 billion cedis, how come expenditure is more than that in the region of 84 billion? There is a gap. How is government proposing to bridge this gap? This goes to budget deficit conversation. Again, a big scary topic that we'll talk about tonight. So tonight, as we examine all these, we're going to look at the numbers versus the reality. My guests are already in. Very interesting pair of folks that we'll be dealing with, but also an independent brain in there to give us the middle ground as well. This is PM, so stay with us. When we return, the details will follow. In the studio is Chairman of the Finance Committee in Parliament, Dr. Mark Asibeyeboah. He's here with his ranking on that same committee, Kaysel Atofosing, who is also a former Deputy Finance Minister and speaks for the minority on these issues. Joining us from the University of Ghana is a Professor Godfred Bokwing. He is Associate Professor, Finance Department and Dean of Students, University of Ghana, and he joins us via live link. Prof, thank you very much for your time here on PM Express. Dr. Mark Asibeyeboah, let me start with you. So, what are your impressions of the budget?
Good evening to your viewers. The budget essentially reviews what has happened in the past, that will be 2019, and then a forecast or gives us projections for 2020, be it revenue, expenditure, deficit, and all the macro indications. So the 2019 performance was highlighted, and by and large, every single macroeconomic indicator has been better than what the MPP came to meet end 2016. If I look at the projections for 2022, I think we are on the right path, and no wonder the IMF says the macroeconomy is favorable.
Okay, let's stress what this means for your constituents, the ordinary Ghanaian. Really, this is what this is all about. If you go to your constituency and you meet them, what would you tell them? How will this reflect in their personal lives or make them better in 2020?
So this question comes up every now and then.
Yes.
This idea of, oh, it hasn't reflected in my pocket, and what do these numbers mean? You know, if you go into any country and you want to assess the economy, all that you are looking at are the numbers. You look at agriculture. Mm-hmm. How is agriculture performing? For 2019, we saw a growth of 6.4%. So if I'm a cocoa farmer and the cocoa subsector grows at 5.4%, it means if I compare the figures year on year, my cocoa output on average has increased by 5.4% of GDP. Okay, if I'm into fishing,
that definitely is more money in your pocket.
Exactly. If I'm into fishing and the fishing subsector grows at 3.3%, those are the implications thereof. Every single subsector has seen positive growth. And this is remarkable. Every single
None of them have been stagnated?
No, every single subsector has seen growth in 2019. And this hasn't occurred in the last 5-6 years. For every single subsector, be it cocoa, livestock, forestry and logging, fishing, manufacturing, electricity, every single subsector has recorded positive growth for the year 2019. And my colleague will attest to it. This is the first time I'm seeing this.
Okay, so that is good news, is it not? You can't argue with the facts. They're just what the facts say.
Okay, I mean, starting from where my colleague actually ended from, saying that every single, and he used the word every single subsector has actually seen a positive growth in the year 2019. Permit me to say that that is inaccurate. Inaccurate in the sense that the numbers you see here, 2019, is projection. Okay? It is projection because we have not ended 2019. And according to the Ghana Statistical Service Bulletin, fishery subsector is seeing a negative growth quarterly basis.
What was the date of this?
You say, you can check from Ghana Statistical Service Bulletin, quarterly bulletin. They always issue quarterly bulletin.
Is this the last quarter?
The last quarter. The last quarter bulletin. You can make reference. I think if I can quickly get that information.
You can move on. I'll definitely check.
And you know that bulletin says it is the fisheries subsector, for instance, is recording a growth, a negative growth of about 8.5%, 6.5% on average as a composite. So clearly the fisheries subsector is not growing. We are seeing a negative growth. Okay, and that has been the case in the last give and take, if you will, I think about 4 or 5 quarters, we are seeing negative growth in the fisheries subsector. Again, if you look at the last quarter, the last 2 quarters of the GDP growth, construction as a composite has also recorded a negative growth of about negative 8.5%. So it cannot be accurate that all the main, every single sector is recording positive growth. We also know that in the last quarter, water, sewages, and then sanitation is also recording a negative growth. So that is not the case. If you were to look at the 2019 numbers here, the 2019 numbers here that you see is annual projection, and that is why it says here projection. The 2018 is provisional and revised final. Okay, so those numbers there are projections, and that is the government's projection that is what is going to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have recorded a positive growth. In fact, taking you back to my initial comment, the budget statement as presented, I think it came out with very lovely English language, and it sounded positive, and everybody listening out there would think that there's something very interesting. But you see, the proof, the detail is there. And the detail is the appendices, where you have to compare where the money is coming from and how the Minister of Finance intends to use the money. That is the budget statement. And the policies underpinning the revenue that is going to be coming in, and the policies underpinning the expenditures that is going to go out. And as to whether those expenditures will fit into the economy in a way that will increase people, it will actually relieve people, and more so bring about the needed growth that we are all concerned about. For me, unfortunately, I did not see that. I did not see a policy that will bring hope to the ordinary people, a policy that will actually create the jobs that we are concerned about. Okay, so the Minister of Finance, team, that this is a budget that one is going to create jobs and bring about prosperity. I did not see that, and I will tell you why.
Tell me.
For instance, I heard the Minister of Finance talking about roads, and I heard you also say that it's going to be a year of roads.
Yes.
This is the same Minister of Finance.
150 roads.
Okay. You see, in the year, yeah, of course. If they are able to do 150 roads, it will create jobs.
Yes.
It will create jobs. But you see, you want to be sure where the money is going to come from.
Sino-Hydro.
To be able, Sino-Hydro alone cannot do 150 jobs, 150 roads. Okay. Let me tell you, we actually build roads from main sectors of the economy like Road Fund, Ministry of Roads. These are the areas that we spend money on to build roads. And let me take you to road fund to start with. If you are to look at the budget statement, okay, budget statement summary of MDA's revenue, you will notice that the revenue that is supposed to come from Ghana Road Fund, okay, as a result of taxes that you and I contribute, they are supposed to get about 1.7 billion Ghana cedis. This 1.7 billion Ghana cedis, instead of the Minister of Finance giving the 1.7 billion Ghana cedis to Ghana Road Fund, what he's done is that he's given Road Fund only about 1 billion Ghana cedis. So clearly, about 700 million Ghana cedis that is supposed to go to Road Fund to fix this roads we are talking about is not going to go to Road Fund. Okay, government has decided to take the money from them through capping and realignment. So what sort of investment are you talking about? If you were to look at the Ministry of Roads as an MDA, the capital expenditure to Ministry of Roads is about 1.2 billion. 1.2 billion cedis. And you told me how many roads it is?
150.
So 150 roads. How can you fix 150 roads with these two kind of the money that I've talked about? It's impossible. So you see, it's not just talk. It is about how much the state has allocated to those road sector for the purposes of paying for the road sector. Because obviously the contractors will work. They expect payment, isn't it?
You said today that 80%
Yes.
of the contractors will be paid. 80%.
I think, but you see, I expect the contractor to be paid. Yeah. Everyone expects the contractor to be paid. And the only way we can pay the contractor is for us to look at where the money is going to come from. And I have done analysis to prove to you that the money is going for the road fund, for instance, what he says the money is going to come from, it has been cut by 700 million. I have also done analysis to tell you that in the road sector, the MDA alone, Ministry of Roads, only about 1.2 billion going to Ministry of Roads for the purposes of capital expenditure. I'm also telling you that in the last 4 years, the amount of money that they've actually taken from road fund, okay, is equivalent to what Sino Hydro is bringing into the economy.
So you're saying that the numbers doesn't match the reality?
It doesn't match it.
I mean,
it doesn't match it.
Marcus,
that is where my problem is.
Marcus, but is that true? Is that the case?
He mentioned the road fund. The road fund goes for routine maintenance, and then you have allocation to the roads ministry. You also have ABFA, and my colleague, if he has averted his mind, most of these roads that are going to be constructed, we are going to use some part of the oil revenue.
No, but the oil revenue goes to the MDAs for payment. So it's in the MDA's budget. If you may refer you to this for the appendices, it's there.
Then
it's the same 1.2.
You also mentioned Sino Hydro, which the vice president just announced that 5 lots have been approved. The Tamale interchange is ongoing, and then you have roads to be fixed in the Ashanti region, mostly in Kumasi. You have roads in the Volta region, the central and western region, and the greater part of Accra, all from the Sino Hydro facility. Mind you, that Sino Hydro facility was approved last year, and it's taking some time to come because there were issues to do with bauxite and all the litigation in court on the bauxite. So I'm not worried, because if you look at paying 80% of contractors, and it says where is the money coming from, you've seen the amortization. The amortization has gone up significantly. Okay, he knows that below the line this year, the budget has put, let's see, about 12 billion or so for paying contracts. So if the minister says
12 billion for what?
Amortization. Yeah. So if the minister says 80% of contractors are going to be paid, then I'm comforted, because it shows in here. Okay, but more importantly, do we want to see our roads fixed? We want to see our roads fixed, and these have been categorized. You see, some of them are 5-kilometer roads, and that's what other people are calling for. Some of them are internal roads, the stretch of which 2 kilometers. Somewhere I have seen, for instance, Peduasi to Koforidua. I'm excited. That's what I want to see.
Is that your constituency?
No, the stretch that goes to Koforidua from Peduasi. So after President Kufuor did up to Peduasi, now President Kufuor is going to continue from Peduasi to Koforidua. And all of these have been detailed. Is the former minister now suggesting that those writing the budget are putting information in the budget which are untrue? He talks about projected numbers. These, the basis for these also come from the Statistical Service. Okay?
Your projections are normally done by the Ministry of Finance, not Statistical Service.
It is based on data that you already have. It is based on data that you already have, that you forecast. And is it not true that in this budget, every single subsector is projected to grow in the positive? It is true. Because if you go further, there are some years, 2021, you see that the manufacturing subsector will grow in the negative. Okay, and it's the same forecast that have produced it. So for 2019, all through, you see these positive numbers here for every single subsector. It tells me the planting for food and jobs is working. It tells me the major interventions, the one district, one factory, the one village, one number. All of these are beginning to show up, and that's how come we see all these positive numbers. And these are the micro in the macro. Okay, so these micro subsectors are seeing positive growth, and I am excited about the direction we're headed.
I'll come to you shortly. I just want to bring in Prof. Professor Bopwing, I'm sure you've been listening in to the two positions expressed both by the chairman and the ranking. Where do you stand on having listened to both and the finance minister? Do the numbers reflect the reality?
Hello?
Yes, we could hear you.
Hello?
We could hear you.
Can you take your question again?
I was asking if you've been listening in, and I'm pretty sure you have. Do the numbers reflect the reality? Listening to both sides on the key numbers and what it means for the ordinary Ghanaian.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I think that to a large extent, the budget reflects reality to a very large extent. I think that we are not out of the woods yet as a country, because largely we have made some progress. I mean, if you look at the statistics, but of course, if you look at overall GDP, it looks quite improved. But of course, when you look at the decomposition, we see mixed results in terms of some of the subsectors. And that is also a fact in terms of water, sewage, electricity, and all of that. So we see some of those mixed performance from the sub-categorization. But overall, as a country, we've made some progress. The question is, could we have done better? And I think we could have done better. When you look at the way the budget has been positioned, especially for 2020, you can see clearly it has embraced the 2020 election. And therefore, the benchmark for comparison is essentially the previous government. And because that benchmark looks particularly weak, when you compare what we are doing now to that, it portrays that we have done very, very well. But it's simply because that benchmark was particularly weak. So if we had to compare ourselves to the Mahama administration, it may suggest that we have done extraordinarily well and we are likely to start pumping champagne. But I think that we should have a better benchmark to do so, because Ghana, despite the progress that we have made, we are growing far below our potential. We have a negative output, a gap that we have to be able to close to the benefit of Ghanaians. We have seen some level of progress, especially in terms of the macro level variables, because it's no longer the talk in town, because inflation is stable, exchange rate is stable, interest rate is heading downwards, and all of that. So once you see all of that, the human tendency is to look beyond that and then look at how these things are reflecting in the pocket of Ghanaians. Apart from the tax revisions, and some, of course, will result in savings in the pocket of ordinary Ghanaians. It may not be that much, but if you look at it within the overall context of government financial management, it may seem a lot to government because we don't have physical space to do a lot of things. And when you look at from where the opposition is coming from, I think I also agree to some extent, because if you look at the way the non-oil real sector is responding, it's not doing quite well. And the reason also is because government is not spending appropriately when it comes to capital spending, infrastructure. And that is a problem, and that is a fact. The data speaks to that largely. And the reason, and this is not intentional, and it's not peculiar to the MPP alone. You can look at this right from 2012, 2013, 2014, 15, 16, and all of that. Because when you see the growth in expenditure, especially wages and salaries, broadly compensation of employees, and then you look at the growth in our interest payment, these two items alone have taken almost all the space. And that leaves nothing, practically nothing for government to do infrastructure financing, which is needed in enhancing the growth drivers of the economy. And where I think government should do better has to do with our revenue side, because the expenditure remains elevated. But so far, the government revenue envelope has failed to respond to the numerous tax measures. You can look at it from 2017, look at that from 2018, look at that from 2019, and I doubt, I have some level of reservations, government will be able to achieve those revenue targets in an election year where data suggests to a large extent that compliance levels are usually not that high in an election year.
And that is a key point that I'll come
so
to substantively.
we are not out of the woods yet. And I don't envy the finance minister because he doesn't have flexibility within the budget. The level of rigidity is so high, and we have not been able to do much about that in the last 3 years.
I'll come to that in a big detail, but let me come to you, Keso. Some of the things you said there. He says the government is comparing itself to pretty poor performance by you, and that may suggest that they're doing well, but it's not true.
I think it's such an unfair statement.
Why?
Unfair in the sense that if you look at the GDP growth for the year 2016 and you decide to disaggregate it, you will get to understand that 2016, the non-oil GDP growth was 4.6%. In the year 2017, the same non-oil GDP growth was 4.6%. Same level. In the year 2016, the oil sector recorded a negative growth of about 35% for a reason. And the reason is that the FPSO that is supposed to drill the oil got broken down. And as a result, you could not even get the revenue, the revenue from the oil sector to be able to even improve the rail sector. That is something that is outside my control, outside the control of the government. It is indeed a technical fault from the FPSO. The following year, we started the process of fixing the FPSO. In fact, we put the FPSO back to life in December before we left office. January, it started drilling, and that is why you could see that oil revenue actually doubled in the year 2016 to 2017. This government did not actually, they are not the ones to fix the FPSO. We fixed the FPSO before we left. As a result, the oil sector recorded a positive growth of 82% in the year 2017. Because it recorded a positive growth of 82%, if it increased the overall GDP to about 8.something%. So with the GDP growth for 2017 of about 8.1%, oil alone contributed in excess almost 3%. Almost 3%. So you have to trail it and then come into conclusion. But for you to just aggregate it and make a statement is wrong. But finally, I think he made a statement. Whilst I made reference to the expenditure lines and pointed to you that the revenue, the expenditure lines does not suggest that government can indeed perform on these roads that they have outlined. We had it in 2019. Nothing happens. But let me tell you, he is pointing out to the amortization. They are going to use amortization, and amortization is what some of the money they are going to use for road sector. Since when? Since when did we use amortization? No, you made reference to amortization.
No, arrears clearance.
But arrears clearance, since when we use amortization for arrears clearance? Evans, for the purposes of our listeners.
Should he explain?
Yes, let him explain, because for me, it doesn't sound right.
The finance minister says 80% of road contractors will be paid.
Yes.
What they are owed is what? It's arrears.
Yes.
Okay. Then I told him that you will see here, if you can see
12
yes.
billion.
Yes. No, I know what you're talking about.
Use your arrears clearance.
Arrears clearance.
Yes.
This is what is going to pay 80%
yes.
of
1.4 billion
of the contractors. Yes, but it's a 1.4 billion
1.4,
is going to pay 80% of the contractors. So this is what I was.
So you are not making reference to the amortization?
No, but see,
Yeah, but isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
So but you see, he didn't say arrest in his statement.
Okay, but
he said he used the word amortization. Okay,
but he's
and that was what I wanted to take him on.
But he's
okay, fine. So he's moved away from the amortization. But let me tell you. Let me tell you. I have a particular difficulty,
okay, sure,
again with the budget statement. Evans, if you have a copy of the budget statement, refer to Appendix 3A, page 215. The finance minister informed us in Parliament that they are going to borrow 22 billion. Okay? Additional borrowing for the year 2020 is 22 billion Ghana cedis. Of this 22 billion, between project loan and program loans is about 5.4 billion Ghana cedis. Sovereign bond, they are going to borrow an amount of 17.155 billion Ghana cedis. Evans, we all know that for you to go into the bond market, you go out there, borrow for the purposes of investment that can repay for itself.
You know what they're doing
the
with
benchmark.
the rules, etc., etc.
Okay, now let me take you to the expenditure. Okay, so if you go again into the same budget statement and look at Appendix 3C, economic classification of central government expenditure. So we want to look at where the money is going to go into expenditure. Let me come to capital expenditure. Capital expenditure in the budget, overall capital expenditure in the budget is 9.2 billion. But please don't be deceived by that headline numbers, because capital expenditure, we have two components, and that is why we have domestically financed capital expenditure and foreign finance capital expenditure. The foreign finance capital expenditure is 5.484 billion Ghana cedis. Okay, in the borrowings that I told you, if you add 4.3 and 1.2, will give you that foreign finance capital expenditure. Foreign finance capital expenditure are those kind of expenditures that comes to Parliament, of which we approve the loans to accompany them. So when you draw down, those loans are already there. So you are not going to use the sovereign bond to fund foreign finance capital expenditure. Evans, domestically financed capital expenditure in the budget is 3.7 billion Ghana cedis. 3.7 billion Ghana cedis. And the same budget statement said, of which the annual budget funded amount, ABFA, oil proceeds, oil revenue is going to be used to pay out of this 3.73 billion Ghana cedis. So, overall capital expenditure, what we are using the Eurobond for, you are going to borrow 7.155 billion and you are spending only 750 million Ghana cedis on infrastructure.
So you're saying the rest is going to
it's going to consumption. This is according to the budget.
Listen.
Tell me where the rest is going. Tell me where the rest is going.
Let's get Marcus.
The Eurobond, before they borrow this 3 billion, they will come to Parliament. We have what we call liability management. Has government told you whether they are going to use 2 billion for liability management or not? If the government goes to borrow 3 billion, which translates into 17.5, you are telling me a component of it, about 1 billion, that's the 5.4 he's talking about, is going into capex. Government could decide that I'm using the rest for liability management to retire some of our long-term bonds.
Nope.
And they will come to Parliament properly to come and justify what they need the 3 billion for. So why do you just cherry pick and pick the 17 and say that,
So show me something else to pick.
It is going to liability management.
Where is it going? Because Evans, if it's going to go to liability management, you see the net effect in the net borrowing. Evans, that is why I referred you to the financing element of the budget statement. Look at the financing.
That's why I've told you.
And the financing here, you have the net. So if liability management is included here, they would have netted liability management from the financing. And it will mean that the net borrowing will be less than 22 billion. This is what I've been living with. We've been doing this all over the years. There's nothing there liability management. That money is going to consumption.
He knows that they cannot go to the Eurobond market without coming to the Finance Committee. And first and foremost, we'll ask about utilization of 2019 proceeds, how the Eurobond was utilized. Then we would ask about the 2020, the 3 billion they seek to borrow. They'll give us utilization, how much is going to liability management, how much is going to capex. He will be there, I will be there. So he's jumping ahead of.
So this will come for breakdown.
Yes.
But his fundamental point is that a chunk of the money is going to go into consumption.
That's not true. That's not true.
So where is it going to go?
If government is borrowing to consume, you will see it in the primary balance. And government projects to have a positive primary balance. This is not like in their time where the IMF itself said that they were borrowing to consume, okay? So you look at your primary balance. If your primary balance is in the negative, then you are borrowing to consume.
Oh, you are completely misleading.
Government projects that there's going to be a positive primary balance
Please.
for 2020. So,
Evans, people are listening to us.
To all intents and purposes,
Let me land on
to
that.
all intents and purposes, the government is not borrowing to consume. Okay, and these details will come up.
So which specific areas, apart from roads, will the money go?
Oh, there's a tall list here, and I can walk you through. There's a tall list and of where
He's looking for it. Your response?
he has it here. See,
Yeah. Okay.
we've had this since this afternoon, and we are going
national building,
Yeah.
school feeding,
You see,
planting for food and jobs.
Evans.
fish landing sites, all of the railways development, one district, one factory.
Yeah, and they've broken the money down.
Exactly.
Evans.
Yeah, it's
Do you understand?
7.7 billion.
Evans,
7.7 billion total.
my chairman has made a very serious point, a serious pronouncement that we need to correct.
Which is what?
He said if government is borrowing for consumption, the primary balance wouldn't have been in positive, it would have been in a deficit. That is very wrong, fundamentally wrong. What is primary balance? Primary balance is expenditure, revenue minus expenditure that exclude interest. So all expenditures, whether consumption expenditure or capital expenditure, is included in that expenditure. And so you cannot tell me that primary balance, when it's in deficit, that you are not borrowing for consumption.
Okay.
Please check your numbers again.
Okay, I
That is not the case
I
at all.
want to come back to some of the bread and butter issues, and I want to come back to the 12.2 billion in people's pockets. Marcus Ibeba, please explain this to me. That has been the headline today for obvious reasons. For me, first time I'm listening to a budget where a finance minister quantifies the money in your pocket. And he breaks down where the money is coming from. It talks about free SHS, the saving of 1.8 billion that people would have saved by this in your pocket. Now, he talks about reduction in payments for parents when it comes to BEC. It talks about tariff reductions that has accrued some 1.8 billion for consumers. It talks about 4.1 billion from reduction in abolishing of taxes. The minority's argument is, well, the Deputy Finance Minister explains that this 12.1 billion to 2 billion is net benefit in people's pockets. But they didn't tell us all the monies they've taken from our pockets, including communication service tax, monies that have gone into fuel price increases. Is this an accurate amount? And already a lot of Ghanaians will ask the question, have you felt the 12.2 billion in your pocket?
Well, go and ask those who have kids in secondary schools if they were supposed to be paying 2,000 Ghana cedis every academic year. That's savings to them. So he's quantifying all of this. The street lighting levy has been reduced. The special import levy, the 1% went away. All the tax reductions that came in 2017.
But it's far more complex than that, is it not?
Yeah,
because that parent is also paying more for transportation because fuel prices have gone up. More for food because prices of food and products have gone up. That is something you need to also balance.
No, because so then if you are talking about general price level, that's where you look at inflation. And the rate of inflation was 7.6%. So the rate at which prices are going up is on a slower pace. Okay? So had it not been all of these interventions, it will be costing you more. That's what he's saying. And if you look at all the interventions, the benchmark revenues, it is costing government 3 billion Ghana cedis because of the reductions in the benchmark revenue. This is money that ordinarily would have accrued to government. He's saying that, no, I'm reducing benchmark revenues, I'm losing 3 billion so that the Ghanaian people can also benefit. Okay? All the free SHS payments, the 2.2 billion, this is money that would ordinarily have accrued to government. That could have gone to fixed roads. The tax reductions in 2017, that cost government 1 billion cedis. These are the things he's quantifying. If government didn't introduce NABCO, which costs government 800 million Ghana cedis, that would be savings to government. If the government didn't restore teacher training allowances, nursing training allowances, these are the things that the minister is now quantifying, that on top of all of these petroleum price increases, on top of all of these transport fares increases, we could still have had all of these monies accruing to government. Government says, take this, Fanekwa. Do you understand? And that's the 12.2 billion the minister is quantifying.
That's the biggest headline for people because people can relate to this. You say It's not as simple.
I think it's laughable, very laughable on the part
But what
of
he's saying is real,
right?
right?
Let me tell you something.
Because my brother
Yes.
benefited
Yes.
from free SHS.
Yes.
I didn't pay anything.
You should be applauding.
But two of them.
You should be applauding the
But that's money in my mother's pocket.
Evans,
is it not true?
Have you also quantified how much your mother has lost, or how much the government has taken from your mother's pocket as a result of government deciding to impose the communication service tax?
No, I haven't.
Have you quantified the amount your mother may have lost, or the government has taken from your mother's pocket as a result of government deciding to increase the cost of fuel prices over the years from 2017 to date? Have you quantified how much your mother has actually lost, or government taken from your mother as a result of the decoupling of the value-added tax and national health insurance levy? As a result of that, the incidence of that tax, or anytime you buy goods and services, that price has gone up a bit because the person who is selling has been denied the deductibility of input tax, and so the product has gone up. Have you quantified all of this? So I would have thought government, in coming out and he thinks he wants to be transparent, they should give us the other side of the story. Tell me how much, as a result of government policy, you have taken out from people's pocket, and tell me how much, as a result of government policy, you've added to people's pocket, and draw conclusion. At that point, people can understand. Because I have a problem.
Let me bring in
fundamental.
Let me bring in
fundamental problems.
Oh, with this figure, you want to see to that quickly, because when you go to your constituency, and people are going to read tomorrow in the papers that 12.2 billion in their pocket, they say, MPs,
Evans, I walked you through, and you have attested to it.
Okay. So that is how it translates.
Yes.
Okay, Professor Bob, let me bring you in here. Have you felt the 12.2 billion in your pocket as well?
But divide the 12.2 billion by the number of Ghanaians. You understand?
So that will be per capita. Yes. But Prof, have you felt it in your pocket?
Debate, the way I see it, because government certainly has a point, because this to some extent can be verified. As to how this is shared to over 30 million Ghanaians is a different thing altogether. But I think that it may be a bit difficult trying to look at it from the net perspective in terms of how much government has taken and then the savings that they have made. Because government always takes from Ghanaians in order to provide services. Because government doesn't print extra money anywhere. I mean, during the previous administration, who were they getting their monies from? From Ghanaians. But I believe that if you look at maybe price development, that hasn't been that extraordinary in terms of preserving the purchasing power of Ghanaians. But I think that this has become maybe a headline story because there's so much expected of the government, and they promise so much, and because of that, and because broadly the economy hasn't done so well in a manner and inclusively to ensure that the subsectors that are labor intensive are actually doing well, because that is where majority of Ghanaians draw their livelihood from. Then counting these things becomes like something that they want to tell Ghanaians that, you know what, having taken so much, we've also put this in your pocket. But when you look at it from 2017 in terms of some electricity reduction, free senior high school, certainly these are some savings in the pocket of Ghanaians. If you look at the restoration of teachers, training teachers allowance, nurses and all of that, these are largely verifiable. But within the overall context, I think there's a certain a level of hardship that we all have to acknowledge. And largely because we are not there yet. Even though government is highlighting some progress that they have made, largely from the macro level, I mean, it has not translated that much to people's pockets. But I think the other critical thing we need to ask ourselves is, maybe what is the level of productivity from the labor side? Because that is also very, very important. Because if all that we do is to wake up and keep asking, what is the level of productivity? Because if you look at the way we are heading, we are not heading well, because, I mean, everything that we are generating is going to just largely consumption, and we are practically not setting aside much when it comes to capital spending to prepare for tomorrow and to actually enhance the asset base of the economy.
So you agree,
that is the issue. So if you want to count that, how much is in your pocket and all of that, but of course, if your salary is increased, maybe the first 2 months you will notice it. After a while, it stabilizes, and then it's like that. That is it.
Yeah.
So I think it's more about, rather than government touting how much they have put in people's pocket, I think it's more about creating jobs so that Ghanaians are employed, that they draw salary, they also pay taxes. I think these are more important to us. But because we've done some kind of cleanup in the banking sector, we've done some cleanup broadly in the financial sector, people have lost their jobs. That's the reality. I mean, when it comes to prices, petroleum, it's gone up to some extent. We cannot run away from that. It has implication for the ordinary Ghanaian. Okay, so you can talk about leave that is supposed to, but broadly, I think Ghana is growing far below its potential. We have made some progress, but I think we can do far better.
Now look
and I think we should be forward-looking from that perspective.
I'm trying to do some calculations
in that way,
myself
it will help all of us.
12 billion divided by 30 million Ghanaians. Everybody will get 400 cedis since 2017 to now.
Recently, the state of Virginia.
That's 400 cedis on the average.
Recently,
12 billion divided by 30 million. All of us will get 400 cedis.
Recently, the state of Virginia in the United States gave every family $220. If you are single, you go $100. That was a tax refund. They felt that the economy was doing well and they had to give back. That was $100 to every individual. How much is that?
Okay.
But even
so 400. So that's in 3 years, 100 and something cedis per year.
That's what they did. And if you're a family, you got $220.
Even
if you're a family of 4, $220.
In this case, not every family will benefit from what the Minister of Finance.
It is the average. This is the average.
But
some families get far more than
others. But some families will get nothing also. You have to acknowledge it.
I haven't benefited from the free SHS. You have.
Things like BEC subsidy has been there for a long time. In fact, my years at the Ministry of Finance, I was always paying for BEC subsidy. It hasn't been increased since, and it's still being paid. And what is government telling us? Recycling them, and all of a sudden thinking that the ordinary Ghanaian is benefiting from it, so we should clap for them. It is very wrong for government to make that kind of analysis. Because my opinion, if the government thinks that there's some savings that ordinary Ghanaian is benefiting from government policies, they should as well list for us
where the ordinary Ghanaian have lost.
Yes.
I want to take a break, and when I return, I want to look at the revenue measures.
Let us look at that.
I want to take a break. I want to look at the revenue measures, the extension of the fiscal stabilization levy and the special import levies for 5 years. Your argument is that this is actually new tax in a form. We'll come to analyze that and then see how government intends to stay within the fiscal limits in an election year. You're still on PM Express tonight, and let's go to the revenue measures because this country cannot survive without them. One of the first ones they've done is the extension of the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy and the special import levies for 5 years to support the budget. It appears that without that, the budget will be in trouble. I mean, this is what every government should do.
Nobody stops a government from imposing a tax. But see, there is a difficulty when a government promises all of us that they're moving from taxation to production and turns around and impose taxes.
In fact, today said
there is a difficulty when a government, a party in opposition, promise the people of Ghana that when they are to come to office, they are going to abolish the special import levy. This is explicit in MPP's manifesto, that we will abolish special import levy, only for them to come to office. Look at the special import levy. It has two components. One of them is 1%, another one is 2%. The 1% is 15% of the total revenue, and another one is the remainder, which is about 85% of the total revenue. Only to take the 1%, which is a smaller component, out, and then extend the 2% from 2017 to 2019. And again, use this budget, inform all of us, the people of Ghana, that they are going to extend it for another 5 years, and then turn around and tell us there's no new tax. In fact, in what he said is that they are going to renew and then this new tax a tax, the special import levy.
Government shall renew and extend.
And extend. They are going to renew and extend. You know what it means? They are going to bring a budget to a new bill to Parliament to reimpose the tax. Because that tax we are talking about expires in December 2019. So what they are going to do is to reimpose that tax coming this budget so that by December, this tax can continue. We turn around to tell us there's no new tax. The second point, the same MPP in their manifesto informed all of us and promised the people of Ghana that they are going to move from taxation to production. And in doing so, corporate income tax will be reduced from 25% to 20%. Okay, they turn around, they came, this is their last budget, they have failed to mention corporate income tax. Corporate income tax, in fact, they decided to forget about it as if they did not sign any social contract to the people of Ghana, that they are going to reduce corporate income tax from 25 to 20%. You know what they've done? When they came to office, there was the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy that was supposed to expire in December 2017. What they did was to extend the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy for 2 years. After extending it for 2 years, forgetting their promise of reducing the corporate income tax from 25% to 20%. This is also a tax that increases the corporate income tax for some companies. In fact, for companies that are even paying 30% like the mining companies, it means they are paying 30%. And from other service industry that they pay 25%, 5% more, it means they are paying 30%. Now, what they've done now is that this budget, they have informed all of us, they are going to increase the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy, the duration. That's something that is supposed to end this year. They are going to extend it for 5 years, ending December 2024.
Dr. Sibe, but that is
not a new tax.
That is a new tax. If it's the tax was not supposed to be there by end of the year,
no,
and then
that is not a new tax.
Extend.
So what's a new tax? A new tax is properly so defined, something that comes anew, introduced afresh. Okay, Professor Mills of blessed memory reimposed the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. It was abolished. JM, you know JM?
Yes.
He reintroduced it. So when the MPP came into power, we already had the National Fiscal Stabilization. In our tax lexicon, there was nothing like known as the Special Import Levy. It was the NDC that imposed the Special Import Levy. Now, true to our word, we abolished one component of the Special Import Levy. So National Fiscal,
what about the other way?
National Fiscal Stabilization Levy, Special Import Levy, the two were in existence when the MPP came into power, having been imposed by the MDs. Now, put this in perspective. For 2020, there are election year costs. Election year costs. This is not any ordinary year. The election could cost us about 1 billion cedis. 1 billion cedis. There's the population and housing census. It could cost us about 500 million Ghana cedis. You have further bailouts in the financial sector. You have all of these take or pay.
Is that a justification for?
Yes, that's the justification.
But then extend it for 1 year.
That's the justification.
To take care of.
No.
Let's extend it for 5 good years. 5 good years.
How much? When you last extended, you did it for 3 years.
No, we did not extend it for 3 years.
You want some certainty.
We did not extend it for 3 years. In fact, for the records, we did not extend it for 3 years. It was 2 years.
Okay.
So
it was 2 years. It was supposed to end.
So you didn't do it for 1
year. December
2017. You want taxpayers to have some certainty in here.
You have us.
The Special Import Levy
extended it for 7 years.
Was to go forever and ever. It was, and they imposed this on condoms, on cutlasses, on all manner of goods. That the Special Import Levy. The MPP came true to our word from moving from taxation into production. We abolished the 1% component of the Special Import Levy.
Why? What about the 2%?
Okay. Now, that's what I'm telling you. There are justifications. Are you saying that the elections should not be run? We are going to run elections which is going to cost us $1 billion.
Even they have extended it for 7 good years.
There are security concerns in the country right now. There are security concerns. It costs money to put the military out there. Okay, so for me, this is justifiable and
7 good years.
when they
But they also want to touch the income tax.
that one is going for low income earners. He knows it's going to help them.
Are you holding a press conference to also put out your budget?
You see, yes, in the coming days, what we did was
Time is up, also.
In the coming days, we are going to address that. At probably before the week ends, we will come out
put out your budget.
Our position.
Okay. This is a Finance Committee edition of the PM Express, the chair and the vice, and we also had with us Professor Bokwe, who joined us from University of Ghana. There's a slight delay, apologies for that. But of course, as tomorrow comes and we begin to digest this, we begin to understand a bit more how this affects you as you begin to measure how you're feeling it in your pocket. Enjoy the rest of the program.